2 years ago, and firstly we are focused on hyper-casual games. Now we are moving into casual games as well, and we are already among one of the top 10 hyper-casual game monetization platforms. Also, we are, as you can see, we are now active around 50,000 apps. And this is how we are integrated into platform. If you want to launch a user acquisition campaign, actually you need to log into TikTok business platform, and basically we are serving audience extension opportunity for TikTok advertisers. And luckily, because of the TikTok's immense growth, we grew 22 times in last 2 years. And as all other ad networks, we are operating on both user acquisition and monetization sides. And now I would like to talk about our region, Asia. So it's not the most popular, most attractive region for most of the developers, but actually it's the biggest one. When we look at the numbers. But it has its own challenges. Naturally, there are many different language, different customs, different cultural barriers. But at the end of the day, when we consider the economic growth rate, the Asia is still the fastest growing region, and the right side of the chart will just get bigger and bigger in coming years. So that's why we really advise our partners to invest in Asia for coming years. So China is our top market, as I said. It's Asia is the biggest market in terms of revenue because of China, because actually China is the biggest country in terms of mobile game revenue. So major part of it is coming from Android, and it's not really directly penetrable, but developers can penetrate it into that market via publishers as well. But also there are 250 million iOS users in China, which makes it a huge market. So the freemium model is the business model that works in China, and it's not just for mobile games, but for even streaming services. So, for example, Tencent's streaming service, which is something like Netflix, it's actually free, and users can watch it for free in exchange of watching ads. And if you want to get rid of the ads, you can then subscribe. That's the main business model. And the main reason behind it is that the average income is still limited in China when you take the average user. So in-app purchases is not the favorite type of monetization for most of the game developers. This is data from one of the research companies. So majority of the Chinese users actually coming from the cities that you don't know the name, because as it said here, it's tier 3 and tier 5 cities, and these are not really wealthy users, but they love. I mean, they are quite okay to watching ads, and they are exposed to ad levels that can be perceived as abusive in Western standards. But this makes actually China the perfect spot for hyper-casual games, specifically because of the in-app advertiser model that the game uses. One specific thing about seasonality for China, that they have their own calendar apart from the one that we use globally, and their New Year, Chinese New Year, is actually 8 days long vacation time, and it's you can think it as 8 days long Christmas vacation, and it's the top season for all of the app developers. So as you can see here, the revenue is actually higher in 2020 because of the COVID restrictions, everybody was at home. So this year, this New Year, it's this February, it's lower, but still when we compare it to the mid-year, it's increased a lot. And if you want to work in China, developers need to focus on this kind of cultural events. And during this New Year events, most of the developers are focusing on in-app events because it's a way to engage users for longer times, and it's something that like developers need to do if they want to prolong the engagement time. The other thing is like summer vacation. So in average, the Chinese student has a much heavier study routine than our Western students. Like they have a similar university entrance exam like we have here, but like the competition is much more fierce, and most of them are attending after school courses and sometimes even weekends. So to sum up, like they have limited time to allocate for playing games. That's why we see much more significant uplift during summer times. The last one actually, this is I would say this is a global theme. So now every country has its own kind of Black Friday days. So this is one of them for China. Actually they have two, one in November and one in December. And we see that like because of the demand coming from e-commerce partners, we see the average CPMs increasing in this period. So Japan, let's move to Japan. It's our second country. So it's a pretty unique country in my opinion. So they're like manga is their like primary way of spending time online. So as you can see in this graph, the revenue and time spent in manga apps is actually quite increasing. This is not really significant for our developers. Like I'm not suggesting you to develop a manga game for China and not Japan, since it's extremely cultural, but this is quite significant for user acquisition campaigns because majority of the audience that spends time in manga apps are actually people below 35 years old. So it's a perfect audience fit, and like most of the ad networks are acquiring users from these apps. So that's why like the most successful ad networks are the ones that have the best relationship with these manga apps actually. And we have quite good deals with that. So this is another graph showing that like manga apps and core game downloads are quite parallel due to the fact that I shared in the previous slide, because like majority of the user acquisition is done via manga apps in Japan. So like also Japan has a like national vacation, which is called Golden Week in around March and May. It's actually they are using lunar calendar, so that's why it changes every year. But like as you can see, we have an uplift during this vacation period as well. Like we observed that during this Obon festival, which takes around 3 days, another national holiday, like especially during these days, most of the developers are focusing on in-game events like the ones that Chinese developer does in China during New Year event. So like in general, in-game events are like used during national vacation to like prolong users' time in app, the time spent in app. And like Japanese has their own calendar and they have a New Year as well, other than the ones in use. So in Japan and China, they have a habit of sending red envelopes, like it's a way of sending money digitally. So all of the relatives and friends are sending this kind of money to each other. And like this period, we see that like in-app purchase events are increasing. So if you have an app that is focusing on in-app purchase model, this kind of national days is the best time to monetize, because like people are spending the money received by their parents or relatives in this way, generally young ones. So let's move to our third biggest country. It's Korea. Like Korea is actually a like multiple role-playing game country. So to put it into context, but when we compare top charts between countries, actually 8 of the top 10 games are role-playing games in Korea. Like China has 4 and Japan actually has 0 role-playing games because they love manga. So this makes Korea a bit challenging for hyper-casual game developers, because like all of these role-playing games have heavy in-app events, like they arrange daily, weekly tournaments, like challenge, so that like majority of the users' times are spent in these apps. But like in terms of the average CPM, rate, so it's actually quite close to tier 1 countries such as United States and like European Union. So if you want to scale in Korea, it's quite lucrative actually. This is a chart like that shows the uplift coming from in-app events. So like we see a similar summer holiday uplift here because like actually the study routine among students is quite similar in Korea as well. They have similar systems, so like that's why we observe a new like a similar uplift. Also like one good thing about Korea is that like they are a Christian population, so they also celebrate New Year and Christmas as well. But on top of that, they have their own calendar as well, so they celebrate their own New Year as well. So we have actually two uplift points at the end of the year. And these are some examples of the in-app events. As I said, like in-app events are ever present in Korea, unlike other countries. Like since there are like many role-playing games, there's a fierce competition between them as well. So that's why they constantly launch in-app events, and that's why it makes it a bit like a hard market to crack in, because the majority of the time of the users are spent in these events. So this is the summary that we went through. Like as you can see, the college uplift, like the summer vacation uplift, and the two like New Year are the peak points of the year for Korea. So if you want to focus in this country, so we would suggest to follow up these cycles like closely, so that you can optimize your revenue accordingly. And this is our last region, like the Southeast Asian. Actually, this region is now referred to as the new China because of the economic growth in China, the average labor cost is increasing, and not just mobile games, but even the traditional industries are now migrating to these regions, these countries, because of the low labor cost, and that's why their economy is booming. So their mobile economy as well, and the population is quite significant in this region. So I think for future, this will be one of the most significant economical regions for gamers. So as you can see here, like we expect this growth to continue like for 5 years more. And like right now they are a bit like high volume, low CPM countries, but the average CPM is and will be just increasing for foreseeable future. So it would make sense to allocate resources to specialize in these countries for future. When we look at these countries cumulatively, like we see 3 uplift points. The first one is actually Ramadan. So especially in Thailand, Indonesia, and Malaysia, there are like huge Muslim population, and during Ramadan, majority of the young people are spending their time in games until the time to break the fast. So that's why every Ramadan we see like the time spent in game apps increasing, also revenue as well, naturally. The other one is the global team, which is like Black Friday events, but there are many, as you will see. So there are 4 of them. Each month, starting from September, each month has a unique like kind of Black Friday day in each of these countries. So starting from September until the end of the year, we see a huge uplift in terms of spending, like advertising spending of these e-commerce giants. So that's why like it's a good time to monetize for game developers. In the previous slide, there is another uplift point in the middle. Actually, it's because like there are huge Chinese population in these countries as well, and they are celebrating Golden Week, which is a Chinese nation holiday. So that's why, even though these countries are not officially celebrating these points, their Chinese population are celebrating. So that's why we see that uplift in mobile revenue and time spent. And let's recap. So the main point is that like each of these countries has its own New Year in their calendar. Mostly they are lunar calendar, and like they oscillate between years. Sometimes they're in January, sometimes February. But like these are the most important like moments of the year. Also, as we went through, summer vacation is much more significant than European countries, because here like students much more like free time compared to the students in Asia. Also, Japan's Open Festival, which is happening around spring and summer, so it's a peak point. And the last one, actually the global trend, like last quarters, like year-end e-commerce craziness, we can call it. And lastly, for South Asian countries, Ramadan is a huge uplift point, also like the Japan Gold Week as well. So to sum up, I would like to show our performance in our top countries. So starting with Japan, as you can see, like in 2 years we grew significantly, and now we are reaching 80% of the manga apps and like 80 million daily active users. And like this is actually happening because TikTok is also growing immensely in these countries and their advertisement team, so that we are just leveraging it for our partners. For Korea, you can also see a significant growth here, but as I said, this is much more challenging market in terms of like casual market developers, since like role-playing games are dominating the place. But still, like we witnessed significant growth, and like now we are reaching 65% of the apps. And lastly, this is our chart for Southeast Asian countries, and as you can see, we just grew up 15 times just last year, and like I think we will grow a similar amount this year as well, because like basically TikTok is booming there. It's one of the most popular social media, and also like now most of the advertisers are starting to target third-party apps as well. So I think this will be a major market for us in coming years. This is a summary of the countries we are active now, but like we expect next year to launch in United States and European Union as well. So we expect to be a global player by next year. So hopefully next year in this event, I'll be presenting charts from those countries as well. So that's all from my side. I would like to answer your questions if you have any.